Hey, well, hello my fellow car modelers. How are you doing today? This video is really technically old videos. Actually, 3 old videos that I have kind of cut a few things out, put them all together because they kind of really are one subject. 2 of them are really old, like from within the first year of me starting this channel, that's 5 years ago, over 5 years ago. The second one was maybe about 2 years ago, or actually a third one I should say, sorry. And I'm decided to do this because I've been getting a lot of questions on the Luka Model Car Hobby Headquarters Facebook group of how to open up doors and trunk lids and stuff and then hinge them. So I did 2 different videos. It was a 2-parter because it showed 2 different types of plastic, your really hard plastic and then your softer plastic, and it also showed 2 different tools of how to cut out the deck lid on these models. And then one of them I took a few years later and I hinged it. I showed how I made hinges. I decided to put all those together and make this one video and bring it back up now to give a lot of you guys that hadn't really looked in my back catalog. You probably only started watching recently. You might never watch until you've seen this or whatever, but you didn't know that I had done this video. So this is a highly requested technique, so I thought I would just bring this to you, just kind of repackage it, bring it to you, throw it on the table. Hopefully it helps. So check this one out. You're gonna like it. It's a little long one because again, it is 3 videos put all into one thing, but this is really good stuff for you if you're wanting to open up your doors or your trunks and hinge them. There, I said it. Wow, that was tough. Let's do this. So we are going to use 2 examples of the most common styrene we encounter when we want to cut out a panel. This is the 80s vintage monogram plastic. It was hard and much stiffer than a lot of the styrene we run into like today's models we've been seeing. This is an 80s Monte Carlo NASCAR body, and we're going to cut out the deck lid on this one. And then we have what we more commonly see today is the softer, more pliable plastic like used on this Roadrunner from AMT. Now, most of the time we would find that on this harder plastic, it tends to take a little longer to cut out, and if it's your first time doing it, I would highly suggest doing it on the softer styrene that we find in the more modern kits today and many of the AMT kits from even the past. So we're going to start with this AMT body. So I'm going to show you how to do this using 2 different types of tools. First one is the most common tool I know you all have, is the X-Acto knife with the number 11 blade. The other one that I highly recommend that many of you probably don't have is the Tamiya Plastic Scriber 2. Now I covered this tool on my episode 9 prepping the roll cage in the Nissan Skyline, and I used it for what it's really not purposed for, in taking off all of the parting lines on the roll cage. Today we're going to use this tool for what it was intended for. So if you can't find these at any of your local hobby shops, there's plenty of them online. Tamiya still sells this, and I'm going to put a link below on where you can find it. But first we're going to start with what I know you all have, is the X-Acto knife. So the best way to go about this is to flip it around. You want to scribe in the direction of the back of the knife. Okay? We're not really slicing. We are removing material from inside this panel line. And you want to do it lightly. You don't want to put a lot of pressure. You want to start where you can start a straight line. We'll get to the curved areas later, but you want to just pull it down. Once you start going, your blade will follow the groove that you had started, and if you can see, it's pulling out material. It takes some patience, and you can see it all curling up on the blade. This takes some patience. It's not a quick job, but you just keep working. Do 1 panel line at a time. Wait till you get all the way through it. And sometimes you'll mess up and go over the body. and you're going to have some scratches. You're going to have to do some filling and prepping, but it happens. But once you kind of go off your line and hit onto the body, and I don't know if you can see in the camera that I did do it, there's a slight off track here. What you're going to find is now every time you go down that, it's going to want to follow the new line. So you got to get in there real slowly and kind of recut your path. It's almost like a railroad track switch, and we got to divert the train going down the proper path again. So just keep on doing that. Okay, so I've been going down this one panel line for a little bit, and now I'll show you in the back. You start to see you're coming through. Once you get to about that right there, it's not quite all the way through, but it's very, very thin, and you can see your whole scribe line. Move to another panel. I'm going to start at the top ridge here, and this is kind of a little more tricky because it curves. Just again, don't put a lot of pressure. Just let the knife follow, especially in your first stroke. Let the knife follow the panel line. Once it gets going, you can start getting a little bit faster, but again, always watch for going over like I did a second there, so I gotta redivert the path. And again, these curved areas on the corners, we don't want to do that. We'll hit that last. So just keep working that. Another thing that is a really good thing to do is, especially if you've kind of jumped your groove and went onto a panel, it's good to once in a while change your direction. So just go a couple one way and a couple other. It just kind of helps you stay into the groove. And here is a good example of why I usually like to switch directions every once in a while. Right now, I started going down and I got kind of stuck on like a little piece that got jammed in there, and it wanted to divert me off onto a panel. So if you flip it around when you get a little stuck spot right there and go in the other direction, it'll help you get it out. Sometimes you got to go in two different directions just to get your speed bump out of there. There's the culprit, and it's gone. So we're going to continue to scribe. Like I said, this takes some time. I've cut a lot out. I'm not going to have you sit here and watch me scribe the whole time. It is a time-consuming job, but take your time with it. Don't get into a rush. Stay light with your pressure on the blade into the styrene, and just lightly keep on following the groove. And as you get deeper, it gets a little easier to stay on track. But just stay with one panel at a time until you start seeing it poke through. I don't know if you can see this, but it's starting to show through. And sometimes if you hold this up, if you hold the body up to the light and shine it from the other side, you can see how thin the plastic's getting. And it'll give you an idea of how far you need to go. Like I said, you just want to start coming through. You don't want to go all the way. And I'll show you why here in a sec. Alright, so I've taken this as far as I want. You can see it's coming through. It's kind of like a bump here. Very, very thin. We got that side done, that side done. Now for this side, we're going to go ahead and use the Tamiya Plastic Scriber 2. So, you want to lock this thing down. Now what I like about this tool is you kind of have to hold it in a different direction than you would with your X-Acto blade, which really helps you with keeping a very light pressure on the work area. So this you have to lay down like that. So we'll show you from this angle. It's a little tough for me because I have to go left-handed. And what this does is it kind of keeps you from putting too much pressure on the panel line, and it follows a lot easier, and you just ride it right down. You see how it's bringing up material? Because this is what this tool is designed for. It's for getting light panel lines more scribed in. It's really popular with the airplane modelers. What I have found for us model builders who like to open up body panels, you can take it farther than the airplane guys go and go all the way through. So again, it just works really. It follows the line better. I have found that I have a less chance of going over the body panel. And I'm doing this left-handed. I'm right-handed, and because I wanted to position it correctly for the camera, I'm doing this left-handed, and it's working out way better for me than the X-Acto blade. What's really nice about this tool, it takes a thinner line out, so you will find that using this, it won't take out as much material as the X-Acto blade in the panel, so you end up having a closer gap, a much tighter gap. So this is just the better tool to have for cutting panel lines to open up a door or a trunk lid. Another nice thing about this tool is you actually can do the panel scribing a lot faster. It takes out a lot more material, and it's a lot more consistent, and it does a cleaner job. You can literally see, let's see if you can see, you can see the difference between scribing out with an X-Acto blade and scribing out with the Tamiya scriber tool. And we have gotten pretty much all the way through on this panel line. And now I just got to cut these out, and then we'll work on these corners. I'll show you what to do about the corners. And to tell you how much more superior this tool is, I went ahead and finished off the first two panel lines that I cut with this. So now that we've gotten this far, we're going to work on the corners. The X-Acto knife is going to be a little better for you in these areas because it's like you're holding a pencil and you can draw it. So I'll get in there with the X-Acto knife and kind of really carefully get around the corners. And the trunk lids that have more of a rounded corner like this on this Roadrunner, they're a little bit more difficult and tricky. So that's when I get in there with the X-Acto knife. I'm going to get in there and just really carefully, like I'm drawing it. So now we're going to get underneath, and you can see your lines. I'll just take my X-Acto knife, and again, it's really good to have a totally fresh blade when you're doing this. I'll get in there and I'll just kind of cut the bottom side, follow the line, and it's okay to punch through a bit. You want to get that kind of film of styrene that you've created cut. You can kind of break it apart like that. What's nice about this plastic that is real pliable is you can get in there and... Alright, so like I said about these corners, I've cut through enough, they'll naturally kind of break right at the line. And I'll just swing it around. Swing it up and down, and there, we've got our deck lid out. Now, you've got some slivers of styrene that's broke off from the bottom. That can all be cleaned up with a little bit of trimming and sanding. Just cut that excess away. And you can follow along like that with your X-Acto blade and cut away all the excess. Get all that trimmed away. Give yourself a nice edge and take your sandpaper and just start working it and shaping it. It's also not a bad idea to take a sandy stick, probably a light grit, so you can keep it flat, and you get yourself a nice flat straight line. Gets a little more trickier on these curved areas. That's where I just use my sanding pads and get that. You do the same with your deck lid. Just trim off the excess that's left from the cut that's underneath, and then you can go ahead and take your sanding file, make these nice flat edges. It's looking good. And then go around your back section, and there you go. Kind of quick, but you can really get a little more involved in your sanding and prep, make it really nice. But you can see right there, we got ourselves a separate deck lid. And that's how you take off a body panel. So let's move on to the other type of plastic that we run into. Harder, stiffer monogram plastic. Basically it's going to be the same deal, but again, this can get a little more time consuming and you got to be a little bit more careful. But you just, again, run down the line, and remember, we're using the back of the blade, not the sharp side of the blade, because what we're wanting to do is pull material out. We don't want to cut, we want to pull the material out. And you're pretty much getting the same result. Again, this plastic can take a little bit more time, and where it really is a lot more different than the softer plastic that we just dealt with is when you get all the way through and you want to start doing your final cut. That's when, if you're not careful, it can break on you. Now here's something I want to show you real quick and why I highly suggest you getting this tool to do this. I'm going to do this more complex curved line on this harder plastic, and just watch how you just lightly put it here, and I am not putting any pressure on this. I'm just going to glide it. Look at how it's pulling up material, and I do my first pass is slow, and it just follows the scribe line. This is just so much better than using the backwards X-Acto blade. So if you're going to start taking off panels, invest in this. I highly recommend it. You're going to be a lot more happier removing panels with this tool. It's so much better. You see I got that speed bump, so I'm going to go the other direction, pull that speed bump out. Alright, so we're to that point that we're going to liberate this deck lid from this body. You can see I've gotten through. You can see a lot of the areas I'm all the way through. But again, I'm just going to follow with my X-Acto knife as best I can. Just follow the underside. It's going right through. That's working out really good. Just cut the bottom piece. One area that's very difficult on these Monte Carlo NASCAR bodies is this spot right here and here at the deck lid, because this is where the spoiler glues on. It's a little thick right there, and it's kind of tough to get through. And what I do for that area is I get the X-Acto blade right in there, and I've scribed it here and here with the scriber, so I've got a line to follow, and it goes right through. Okay, just get in there, make sure all fingers are out of the way. You don't want to lose any chunks. Just get in there and work that area. Well, that one's tough. That one's being tough. Just want to get in there and do a little bit. I hated that sound. Sound like you broke something, but nah, just cut through. So we got cut through. And look, it's hinging a little bit naturally. So we want to take it, and again, at this point, you want to always go the opposite direction. How you don't want to lift the deck lid that way because you've been cutting on this side. You want to bring it in this way. That'll break away the remainder plastic that's underneath. Just bring it down like that, and it comes right off. And you just got a little bit of cleanup, trimming here. Another thing, when I'm cleaning up all the excess plastic that's from the bottom, I like to, so I don't wreck any of my surfaces that are going to be seen, I like to take like the deck lid and the blade and go at an angle this way and cut off all that excess. I don't want to mess around with the top surface. So again, I go at an angle like this, and I just follow along and I trim off all that excess. Get it all nice and clean. Then you can go back with your file. We'll take our sanding pad for the curved area and just follow it. What's nice about this deck lid compared to the Roadrunner deck lid is we got squared off edges, so it was a lot easier. We didn't have that painstakingly drawing out the rounded edge. So that's another thing to look for your first time doing this. Try to find a body panel that has very squared off edges. It's just easier for your first time. You can see on here, maybe if you can see in the light, There's quite a few mess ups I did. I went past. Don't even concern yourself with that. You can fix all that in the body prep stage. It's gonna happen. There's just no way you can cut out a panel. I mean, you might get lucky your first time. There's no way you're going to cut a body panel out without going over the line a few times. It's gonna happen. So I don't even worry about it. I just let it happen and just continue on. It could all be fixed during body prep. It's not an issue. Let's get this cleaned up real quick. Same way, want to go at an angle. Sand away, sand away. Alrighty, so there we go. We got ourselves a deck lid that's open. We can do some nice trunk detail on this model. It fits right in there really nice and really tight. Now, something else to consider with the panel fitments is you also don't want the gap to be too tight, because when you go ahead and you prime and you paint, that adds millage to the edges there, and you can sometimes find if your panel gap is way too close, when everything's painted, the panel won't fit back into place. So also consider that when you're making your gaps on your panel lines. So that's how you open up deck lids indoors. It's all how far you want to take it and the type of detail you want to do and hinges and all that. That is a whole nother how-to.
You're watching the Luka C channel on YouTube.
But what we're going to do now that we have the deck lid out, this is probably one of the most requested how-tos I get, is how to make hinges. I'm going to show you how to make some hinges. Pretty easy way to make hinges. We already have the deck lid cut out. Here, let's get this out of the way, and I'm going to show you what we need. The tools you need, well, we've got a couple necessary tools. I got a flat nose, needle nose type pliers, and I have this guy right here that is like round. These are kind of like my shaping tools I use, and I got various other types of needle nose pliers in different shapes, you know, that if I need it, I have them, you know, right over there. This is a piece of K&S tubing and steel and all that stuff, and rods and wire and whatnot. This is just a piece of brass wire or rod. Let's see what size this is. We're looking at 0.032 is what that would be. This piece of rod here has seen much better days. It's good to have a nice fresh one. I happen to not, and I had this one that I used for poking glue bottles for years and other things. I kind of cleaned it up a bit. It's really best to have one that's nice and perfect and straight, but you know, we'll make do with what we got. And one other thing you need, ProTech heater hose. What? ProTech heater hose? What the heck do you need heater hose to make hinges? I'm going to show you. That's why you're watching, right? This stuff is what you're going to need. It's pretty much the materials and, of course, glue. I am going to use CA glue, but quite possibly my extra thin might work out, but we will see. We'll get to that point in a moment. Oh, one other tool you need. You got to have some cut and side dikes there because, well, you know, I got to cut this wire, so... Let's get on with this. We're going to start by prepping this situation. Let's tape this up and make sure you are right where you want to be with this too. It's flat. It's right at its spot that needs to be. And then on the bottom, you want to keep it like down here. Okay, get that all taped up pretty nice, right where you want it. But you want to stay away from this area. This is where our workspace is. Felix says no, but I'm telling you, don't listen to him right now. But don't tell him I said that. I'm going to leave that right there all upside down and everything. We need some pieces of wire. So we want to have pretty much equal amounts. I would say that is a little bit, about 1.25 inches should do us. Alright. When we start doing this, and we're going to be doing some bending, I want this to be the part of the hinge that's going to be right here on the deck lid. And then back towards here will be the part that'll be there. I like to keep the two pieces together. Sometimes it's easier to wrap a piece of tape around there, but sometimes tape gets in my way. I'm going to start with the flat ones. pick a spot that we can equally bend it. Probably go about like that. And about a 45-degree angle will do the job. Now what I want to do is, this is where my round ones come in. I just use them as a kind of a bender. I get it around like that. So you don't want something like that to happen, but there you go. That's kind of the shape you're after. You want those things to be exactly the same.
You're watching the Luka C channel on YouTube.
This is where the bends are going to get different. You got to decide how you want this, and we're looking at, it's kind of got a slope down angle. So because we got a slope down angle, really, let's see, look at your hinge like that. You got a slope down angle, kind of about like that. So it would look like right about, which this would be easier to keep this all the same. I'm going to take a Sharpie, and again, you want to keep your hinges being the same, right about there. See, we did that right about there. That put it up. What I'm about to bend is going to be just a touch higher than there. So now we got these marks right there. What we're going to be going after is, one's got to go bending that way and one's got to go bending that way. But we want them to bend at the same spot. I'm going to hold on to that. Make sure that you're doing it at a perfect right angle. Can I see that? So you want that pointing in that direction, and just give it a bend in that direction. Look what we got there. You can get a little more bendy about it. Alright. And this one, of course, this one's going to bend in the other direction. Make sure we're lined up nice and straight. It's a lot of eyeball engineering. If you want to get a little more structured with it and be measuring and making sure everything's right, you know, by all means do that, because, you know, you're going to have precision involved. Me, I'm not so precise. But we can see right here, we've got ourselves some hinges. Pretty well the opposite, but equal. I'm probably going to trim this down a little bit, but just let's make sure we got these all bent in the right spot where everything's going to be equal. Because if you get this off too much, your deck lid won't lay down right. Everything seems to be pretty equal. It's also a lot of bendability here. You know, you can adjust. That's a nice thing about this this brass rod, is it's very adjustable. Once you get your basic bends, you can get this all moved around where you need it. At this point, we're just going to do a little test run here. What we're after is, you're going to want to go right about there. But I'm going to get this all the way to the end right there. Now, a problem you got to realize too is, you got to always be looking for is how this opens. You got to make sure where your bend's at. So the bend can't be too far back. It can be a little bit more forward, but it's going to open it up the best where you have this peak right here, pretty much just slightly forward of your door line here, your lid line. You want it a little bit like out towards the back, over where this bend is more underneath the edge of the lid than at the edge of the body. That's going to be about where we want it, is right about there. And that kind of gives you the idea how long this piece is. Because of room and all that, you also have to understand you got to make provisions for your, right about here is where your interior tub is going to lay. So you may have to always use your interior tub, make sure that's not going to be in the way, or if there's modifications you have to do. That's all the stuff you got to look for. Could go a little bit more forward, would probably put it right about there. Which means I'm probably going to trim this baby right there. I will copy the other side, cut it the same length. Just matching them up. kind of getting. Or you could measure, which is always a nice option. There we are. We've got our hinges. Now, there's a whole lot of, you can tweak it and move it and make it a little better, but that is your basic shape. This is where I like to use this. I know a lot of people who do hinges this very way, but they end up using like a piece of rod tubing or brass tubing that they just can slide into. But you see, you got a whole lot of this going on when you use just a piece of tubing. This is brass tube, or I didn't have some styrene tube laying around to kind of show you. I want this thing to be tight. I want it to, when I lift up that hinge, it'll stay like that. And this is where your heater hose from ProTech is going to help you out with that. Let's get this open. I want to thank Charlie for sending me some of this. I looked to do this video and I was out. So this is the best stuff to use for this, because you need basically that size insulation. If you have anything like that, it'll work, but this is what we're after. It's a tube. Now he has wire cord in there, so I'm stripping it. What I want is the insulation. I want this tubing. And I can take this now and slide it onto there. It's tight fitting. It slides right on there. See that? Go ahead and trim it off. You take that tubing, slide it onto this end here. Find your end, cut it off. See what we've got there? So I'm holding this tight, and you can move that around and it just holds it in place. Another thing that this does, because it slides here, it'll help you adjust your alignment of your deck lid too. I am using CA glue. This is where the steady hand part comes. Looks like we've got just a little bit of adjusting to do. Let's get this totally right. I want that to be good. Okay. And glue the areas that we need. A little glue on that and a little glue on that. Hold on to this thing. And I want to put it in its exact spot. Of course, what I've done too is my tape is a little in the way. I need to push some of the tape out of the way. So we're going to try this again. Okay, and we are going to lay it down where we want it. And we got to make sure everything is nice and straight. There we go. It's about where I want it. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and get this one all taken care of, and we'll be right back. I've got my hinge all set up. See that? But you also see, by using this for your tube instead of that big honkin' piece of styrene tube, it also isn't so big and lunky. It looks a little better and easier to hide. A lot smaller. A lot smaller. And it already has. I just want to get. We're all in place there. I'm going to pull carefully. Pull my tape off. Don't want that disrupting what I got going there and break those hinges. Got to be careful. And there we go. You got your hinges all in place. And my advice is, when you put these on, let your glue set up. I'm kind of in a hurry because we're making a video here and I've been fighting. My glue's been breaking away. It's not totally set up, so it's still a little fragile. But we've got it to where, it is. Also, another thing I would do, for the sake of just doing this video on the hinges, I didn't concentrate, because I know there's going to be people saying that, well, what about the drip rails, or what goes around, to make this an accurate looking trunk lid, Yeah, I usually will take styrene and I will make, the shapes of the sheet metal that's in the trunk when it's opened. But, you can see, for the sake of this video, we're just showing you how we have hinges now. And look at that. It stays up. That's the advantage of using that tubing or using the heater hose from ProTech. It grips on to that wire that we're using, that brass wire, and holds that deck lid up. See that? It stays up pretty good. You got a lot of tweaking and moving around. Take your time with it. I did a kind of a fast one here. You can make them look really, really good. But that's the basics of making hood hinges. It works for doors. I've done it with doors or even hood hinges. I mean deck lid hinge and trunk hinges. Jeez, I'm all over the place. Sorry people, I hope you understand what I'm saying. I babble. We all know that about me if you're a regular watcher. But there you go. There's your hinges. Let's just show you how they work from this angle. Pretty cool. Look at that. Hinges. Hinges. Trunk hinges. We love it, don't we? Hey, I'm glad I can help. Thanks a bunch for tuning in and watching. Let's shut the trunk. Nobody steals the groceries. Hope you learned something here. Let me know down in the comments below if you have any ideas of how you do this. If you think it would help people out, by all means, throw it down there. It's modeling. We all have different ideas of how we do things, and I always like checking out what other people do. This is my way. Brass wire rod, and let's not forget ProTech heater hose. That's just the perfect size, all worked out, and look at how it's just holding that deck lid up. That is awesome. And shut that. So I hope you learned something from that. I hope this is real helpful, bringing this back to you, seeing it for the first time, and now you don't have to hunt down all these different videos. They're all together now for you. So there you go. One thing. Now you know how to do it. If you have any questions or any other suggestions, or maybe you might know some old videos I might have done, and you think I should re-up them so they're easy to find, let me know down in the comments. Other than that, have a great day. Enjoy the model building. I know I do. So I'm going to get back to model building. Actually, I'm going to get back to editing and finishing some videos for you so you can enjoy your model building. So I got to say this to you. You got to do this. Keep gluing those fingers together and keep cutting that styrene. Let's get in there and cut it. And we will see you in the next video. Here's the producers.